Her heart was beating so loudly that it seemed the entire forest could hear it. She froze, staring at the tiny grey bundle huddled against the roots of an old spruce. The wolf pup was trembling, not from the cold, but from fear that shone in his eyes. So small, so defenseless, all alone. Her hand reached out on its own. Her fingers already touched the wet fur, and the pup flinched, pressing himself even harder, as if preparing for a blow. Something inside snapped, a pity so sharp and sudden that it took her breath away. She carefully lifted him, feeling the tiny heart pounding wildly under her palm. The pup didn't bite, didn't growl, only whimpered pitifully, nuzzling into her hands. In that second, it didn't matter what they would say at home, how to explain, where to put him. Only one thing mattered. He was alive, he was here, and she couldn't leave him. Pressing the animal to her chest, she turned and ran along the path home, not looking back at the dark forest behind her. Before we begin, by tradition, write in the comments where you're from, subscribe, like, and watch till the end. We're starting. An early July morning was creeping up on the village, quietly enveloping the houses in a light haze of fog. The sun was just beginning to rise over the taiga, painting the sky in soft pink and golden tones. In the Pine family's house, the light was already on in the kitchen. Alice, a 36-year-old woman with soft features and kind eyes, stood at the stove, stirring porridge in a large pot. She softly hummed an old melody that her mother used to sing to her. Her hands, accustomed to knitting with needles and sculpting clay, were now deftly covering the table with a white tablecloth and setting out plates. At the large wooden table sat Danny, a little boy with a round face and curious eyes. In front of him lay a thick book with bright pictures of animals. He traced his finger over the image of a grey wolf, moving his lips and trying to read the caption under the drawing. Down the stairs came Olivia, a 14-year-old girl, carrying her school backpack on one shoulder. Her face was sullen and closed off. Long dark hair fell over her shoulders, hiding the expression in her eyes. Outside, it was summer heat, but inside her soul, it was cold. She didn't look at her mother or brother, silently heading to her place at the table. By the front door stood Alex, a 39-year-old man with broad shoulders and a stern face, checking his hunting gear, counting cartridges, inspecting the strap on his rifle, packing everything into a worn backpack. His movements were precise and honed to automation. At his feet lay motionless Nala, a hunting laker with grey-white fur. The dog watched her master with an attentive gaze but didn't move, didn't wag her tail, just waited for a command. "Breakfast is ready, come to the table, everyone," called Alice in a soft, enveloping voice, turning to the family. Alex zipped up the backpack, stood up, and headed to the table with a heavy gait. Danny joyfully jumped up from his chair, but his mother gestured for him to sit back down. Olivia was already at her place, staring into her empty plate. The family sat down at the table. A tense silence fell, broken only by the sound of spoons and the ticking of the old wall clock. Danny couldn't stand the silence first. He reached across the table to his father, holding the open book with both hands. Dad, look, this is a wolf," exclaimed the boy, pointing at the picture. "He's big and scary." Alex tore his gaze from his plate, looked at the image, and nodded curtly. "Yes, that's a wolf," he said coldly and matter-of-factly. "A predator. Hunts deer and hares, lives in packs in the taiga." "Is he kind?" asked Danny with hope in his voice. "No," cut off Alex. "He's an animal, he does what he needs to survive. Kindness has nothing to do with it." Olivia lifted her eyes from her plate and looked at her father. Nala was just passing by the table, heading to her water bowl. The girl extended her hand, wanting to pet the dog on the head. Her fingers almost touched the soft fur. "Don't touch," said Alex sharply, intercepting her hand with his gaze. Olivia jerked her hand back as if burned. "I just wanted to," she began quietly. "Nala isn't a toy," interrupted the father, breaking off a piece of bread. "She's a working dog, a hunting laker. If you play with her and spoil her, she'll stop obeying in the forest. Do you understand?" "But she's alive," objected Olivia, feeling the familiar irritation flaring inside. "She feels too. She needs affection." "Feelings have nothing to do with work," replied Alex firmly, looking his daughter in the eyes. "The dog must perform her duties. I feed her on schedule, monitor her health, train her. That's enough. Everything else is sentimentality." Olivia clenched her fists under the table, lowering her gaze. Her jaw tensed, but she remained silent. Alice saw how her daughter struggled with the urge to respond sharply. The mother placed a warm hand on the girl's shoulder, gently squeezing, but said nothing. "Danny, want more porridge?" asked Alice, trying to smooth over the conflict and change the topic. "Yes," the boy cheered, extending his empty plate. While the mother served porridge to her son, Olivia gathered her courage. She knew her father was unlikely to approve, but she couldn't stay silent anymore. The words burst out on their own. "Dad," she began uncertainly, not raising her head, "I wanted to ask. Do you remember I talked about the veterinary college?" Alex froze with his spoon halfway to his mouth. His face immediately hardened. He slowly lowered the spoon back into the plate and looked at his daughter with clear displeasure, shaking his head. "We've already discussed this, Olivia," he said with emphasis. "But I really want to," the girl tried to continue. "Veterinary is not a serious profession," interrupted the father, pushing his plate aside. "You'll be treating cats and dogs for rich people from the city. That's not real help." "But animals need help too," exhaled Olivia. "People need help," hammered Alex. "You should become a doctor, a real doctor who saves human lives. That's a profession that's truly important, that gives stability and respect." She lowered her gaze to her plate, feeling everything inside contracting from resentment and powerlessness. Alice placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder again, but remained silent, not daring to argue with her husband in front of the children. Alex stood up abruptly from the table. The chair scraped against the wooden floor. "I have to go to work," he threw out, heading to the door. He grabbed his backpack, threw on a light jacket, and left without saying goodbye. The door closed with a dull thud. Nala stood up and followed her master. A heavy silence hung in the house. Danny looked fearfully at his mother, then at his sister. Alice sighed and stroked her son's head. "Go get ready for kindergarten, sunshine," she said softly. The boy obediently slid off his chair and ran upstairs. Mother and daughter were left alone in the kitchen. Alice moved to a chair closer to Olivia and hugged her shoulders. "He just worries about you, sweetie," she whispered, pulling the girl to her. "He wants you to have a secure future." "He doesn't understand me," muttered Olivia, feeling tears welling up in her throat. "He doesn't listen to me at all. He doesn't care what I want." "That's not true," objected Alice, stroking her daughter's back. "Dad loves you, he just doesn't know how to show it. He grew up in a different time, in a different family. He was taught that a man must be strict and make decisions for everyone." Olivia was silent, wiping away the tears with the back of her hand. "You know," continued the mother thoughtfully, "I once dreamed of becoming an artist. I wanted to go to art school, paint pictures. But my mom said it wasn't serious, that you couldn't make money on it, and I became a nurse." "And do you regret it?" asked Olivia quietly, lifting her tear-streaked eyes to her mother. Alice pondered, then shook her head with a soft smile. "No, I help people and that's important, but I still paint at home, embroider, sculpt clay. My creativity didn't go anywhere, now it's for the soul, not for earning." "But I don't want that," said Olivia stubbornly. "I want to treat animals." "That's my dream." Alice hugged her daughter tighter and kissed the top of her head. "I know, dear, and I believe in you. Just give Dad time. He'll understand. He'll definitely understand." The mother stood up, went to the cabinet, and took out a few bills. She returned to her daughter and handed her the money with an affectionate smile. "Take this for pocket money," she said warmly. "Buy yourself something at school." Olivia took the money, stuffed it into the pocket of her light summer jacket, and stood up from the table. She put on her backpack, feeling its weight not only physically but also on her soul. Her heart was heavy from the conversation with her father, from the misunderstanding, from the inability to change his mind. "Thanks, Mom," she whispered and left the house. The warm summer air enveloped her. The scent of blooming herbs and sun-warmed earth filled her lungs, but Olivia barely noticed the beauty of the summer morning. She walked to school slowly, immersed in her thoughts, and in her head, the breakfast conversation replayed over and over. Meanwhile, Alex was already driving along the dirt road to the ranger station. Nala sat in the back seat of the old UAZ, sticking her muzzle out the slightly open window. The forest gradually thickened on both sides of the road. Tall pines and spruces stood motionless, their crowns rustling in the light wind. Sunbeams broke through between the trees, creating a whimsical play of light and shadow. After 20 minutes, he arrived at a small wooden house on the edge of the forest. This was the ranger station, the place where Alex spent most of his time. Next to the house stood another UAZ. Alex recognized it immediately. It was his partner and best friend Nick's car. Alex got out of the car, let Nala out, and headed to the house. The door was ajar. Inside at the table sat Nick, a man about the same age as Alex, with a graying beard and piercing gray eyes. He was studying a large map spread out on the table. "Ah, Alex is here," nodded Nick, not tearing his gaze from the map. "Look, fresh tracks here, passed by last evening I saw." Alex approached closer, leaned over the map. Nick pointed his finger at a section of the forest 3 kilometers from the village. "We move out at dawn tomorrow," said Alex, pulling a red marker from his pocket and circling the area on the map. "Planned, cull. The wolf pack finally," grumbled Nick, leaning back in his chair. "They've gotten too bold. Last month, they killed 3 sheep at Petrovich's, and now their pups are grown, about 2 to 3 months. Soon they'll start teaching them to hunt. Too many predators." Alex nodded silently. He took a thermos of tea from his backpack, poured some into a mug, and sipped the hot drink. Nick continued complaining about the increasing number of wolves, but Alex listened with half an ear. "Breakfast means at dawn," confirmed Nick. "I'll prepare the gear, check the rifle." "Good," agreed Alex. He pulled a worn leather wallet from his jacket pocket, opened it, and looked at the photo. In the picture was the whole family, Alice smiling, hugging little Danny. Next to her stood Olivia, then still a little girl. Everyone was laughing. Alex himself stood behind with his hands on his wife's shoulders. Alex sighed and closed the wallet, putting it back in his pocket. The day passed in routine tasks, checking the territory, inspecting animal feeders, repairing fences. When the sun began to tilt toward sunset, Alex returned home. The family had already gathered for dinner. This time, the atmosphere was calmer than in the morning. Danny joyfully recounted his day at kindergarten, waving his spoon and nearly knocking over a glass of juice. He retold the story of how he and his friends played hide-and-seek outside and how he found the best hiding spot. "And no one found me," exclaimed the boy, his eyes shining. "I was the cleverest." Alice smiled, listening to her son. Then she stood up from the table and brought her new work, an embroidery of a forest landscape. On white fabric with thin colored threads, a summer forest was embroidered, green spruces and a small house on the edge, bathed in sunlight. "Beautiful," admitted Alex, examining his wife's work carefully. His face softened, warmth appeared in his eyes. He always admired Alice's talent, though he didn't show it often. "Thank you, dear," smiled the wife, pleased with the praise. Olivia was silent throughout dinner, poking her fork at the mashed potatoes. She ate almost nothing, just moved the food around her plate. Alex noticed her mood, the tense silence, lowered eyes, hunched shoulders. He opened his mouth to say something but changed his mind and stayed quiet. Alice exchanged a quick glance with her daughter across the table, a silent support they had learned to convey without words. Olivia nodded barely noticeably to her mother in response. After dinner, the family dispersed to their tasks. Danny went to play with toys, Alice started washing dishes, Alex settled in an armchair with a newspaper. Olivia went up to her room. She closed the door behind her and collapsed on the bed. On the nightstand lay a thick magazine about animals that she bought with her pocket money. Olivia took it and began flipping through the pages, looking at photos of dogs of different breeds: shepherds, Labradors, Huskies, Collies. On the walls of her room hung posters with images of animals: dogs playing in a meadow, wild wolves in a summer forest, foxes, lynxes, bears. The whole room was filled with her love for the animal world. Olivia lay on her back, holding the magazine over her head, and dreamed of her own pet. She imagined playing with a dog in the yard, throwing a ball to it, hugging it in the evenings. A smile appeared on her lips. Suddenly, outside the window, a bark rang out, cold, lonely, almost mechanical. It was Nala. Olivia turned her head to the window. The dog lay in her kennel in the yard, occasionally barking into the twilight. Her voice sounded like a command, not an expression of joy or playfulness. Olivia got up from the bed and approached the window, looking at the evening sky outside the glass. Over the tiger stretched a sky painted in pink and purple tones of sunset. Somewhere out there, in the depths of the forest, lived wild animals, free, knowing no collars or commands. "Someday everything will change," whispered Olivia to herself, gazing at the forest. "I'll definitely do what I love." She returned to the bed, lay down, covered herself with a light sheet, and opened the magazine again, reading an article about puppy training, how to find an approach to each dog, how to understand their language. Her eyes gradually closed. After a few minutes, the magazine slipped from her hands. Olivia fell asleep, still holding a photo of a Labrador puppy. The lights went out in the house, summer night fell, and in the morning the hunt was to begin, the very hunt that would change the life of the entire Pine family. Dawn crept up on the tiger slowly, painting the tops of the pines in golden pink tones. The air was fresh and cool. Summer nights in the forest are always colder than in the village. Dew glistened on the grass and leaves like a scattering of tiny diamonds. Along the narrow forest road, 2 UAZ vehicles drove slowly, raising clouds of dust behind them. Alex sat behind the wheel of the first car. His face was focused and stern. Next to him on the passenger seat lay his rifle, ready for use. Nala settled in the back seat, sticking her muzzle out the open window and greedily inhaling the forest scents. Her ears were perked. Her eyes attentively followed every movement in the forest. Following was Nick in his car. The two rangers were silent, each immersed in their thoughts. This was routine work, a planned cull of predators that they conducted several times a year. Nothing personal, just the necessity to control the wolf population, which was becoming a threat to livestock. The cars stopped at a familiar clearing. The men got out, quietly closing the doors. Alex let Nala out, who immediately sniffed the ground and began leading them along a barely noticeable trail. They walked silently, their steps were honed by years of working together. Rifles hung on their shoulders, fingers were ready to lie on the triggers at any moment. Alex stopped, squatted down and carefully inspected his rifle, checked the bolt, made sure the cartridges were in place. His face was impassive like a surgeon before an operation. This was work, nothing more. Easy job today, joked Nick quietly, stopping nearby. Fresh tracks, the pack is somewhere close. We'll be done by lunch. Alex nodded without answering. Nala, running ahead of the rangers, suddenly caught the scent of the pack. She stopped as if rooted to the spot, then burst into loud barking, the echo of which spread through the forest. The pack leader instantly turned toward the sound, his fur stood on end. The she-wolf jumped to her feet, nudging the sleeping pups with her nose. Her eyes lit up with alarm. She knew that sound. A dog meant people, and people meant mortal danger. She grabbed one pup by the scruff with her teeth and dashed away from the den. The leader growled, showing long white fangs, warning the invisible enemy. His growl was low and threatening, sending chills down the spine. The first shot rang out. The sound was deafening in the morning silence. It tore the peaceful forest atmosphere to pieces. Birds flew up from the trees with cries. The echo rolled between the trunks, reflecting and multiplying. The pack exploded in panic. The she-wolf ran with the pup in her teeth. The second pup darted after her. The leader leaped aside, disappearing into the dense ferns, and the smallest pup, who had been playing aside in horror, ran in the opposite direction, where there was no mother, no pack, no safety. The second shot thundered almost immediately. The bullet whistled over the pup's head, hitting a tree and stripping bark. The little one yelped in fear and darted even deeper into the forest. His small paws barely touched the ground. He ran without choosing a path, not understanding the direction, obeying only the blind instinct to flee from the terrible roar, from the smell of gunpowder, from death. Alex appeared in the clearing by the den, holding his rifle at the ready. He saw the flashing shadow of the leader and raised his weapon, aiming, but the wolf was fast and smart. He disappeared behind a thick pine trunk, and when Alex ran around the tree, the leader was gone. Damn, cursed Nick, running into the clearing after him. They got away, reacted too fast. Nala rushed around the clearing, sniffing the tracks. Her barking became more excited. She tried to indicate the direction, but there were too many tracks. They scattered in different directions. One of the pups ran off separately, shouted Nick, pointing to small tracks leading in the opposite direction from the pack. Over there to the north. Alex looked at the tracks, then at his watch, shaking his head. Leave it, he's small, without the pack he won't survive. He'll die on his own in a couple of days. Let's try to find the main group. Nick reluctantly agreed. The men moved along the tracks of the she-wolf and leader, and the little wolf pup was left alone in the vast forest. He ran until his paws refused to obey him. He stopped, breathing heavily, his small chest heaved. He looked around, only trees, unfamiliar scents, alien territory. He didn't know this place. He began to whine quietly, calling his mother in a thin, plaintive voice. He waited, listening, but no one answered, only the rustle of leaves, the distant knock of a woodpecker. The pup trudged on, no longer running but walking slowly and uncertainly. He tried to find familiar scents, the smell of his brother's den, but everything was foreign. The sun rose higher, it became hot. He wasn't used to long treks. Several hours passed, the pup was exhausted. He saw a mouse running between roots, tried to catch it, lunged clumsily, but the mouse was much faster and more experienced. It disappeared into a burrow between stones. The pup whined disappointedly. Thirst grew stronger. He found a small stream trickling between stones, lapped the cool water greedily. Then he lay on the moss nearby, drained. His eyes closed. Evening came and then night. The pup found an old fallen tree with a small niche underneath. He crawled in, curled into a ball. The night chill penetrated to his bones. He trembled, whining in his sleep. He dreamed of his mother, the warmth of her body, the safety of the den. Somewhere far away, a drawn-out howl sounded. It was his pack. The pup jumped up, listened, tried to determine the direction, but the echo distorted the sound, and he couldn't tell where it came from. He whined in response, but his thin voice was lost in the night forest. The morning of the second day greeted him hungry and scared. He continued walking, not knowing where. Instinct led him to seek open space where it was easier to find prey. He came out to the forest edge. Ahead in the distance, roofs of houses were visible. The smell of smoke from chimneys wafted, dogs barked, human voices were heard. Instinct screamed, "Go away, danger, people!" But hunger was stronger. Where there are people, there is food, maybe scraps, maybe something else. The pup slowly moved toward the village, hiding behind bushes. He stopped behind thickets of rose hips at the very edge of the road, observing, listening. He saw a girl walking along the road with a backpack on her back. He froze, not knowing what to do, run back into the forest or stay. Meanwhile, Alex and Nick returned to the ranger station empty-handed. They lost the pack's trail at the river, the wolves crossed to the other bank, and Nala couldn't find where they emerged. The men were tired and irritated. "No luck today," grumbled Nick, removing his backpack. "The leader is experienced," quickly led the pack away. "It happens," replied Alex briefly, unloading his rifle. "Better luck next time." "That pup who ran off separately," began Nick. "Forget it," interrupted Alex. "Without his mother he won't last even a week. Summer, but the cub is too small, doesn't know how to hunt, doesn't know the territory, he'll die on his own." They said goodbye. Alex got in the car and drove home. The sun was already setting when he pulled up to his house. He took off his hunting jacket, hung it on a hook by the entrance, went to the bathroom, thoroughly washed his hands and face, rinsing off the smell of gunpowder and forest. Alice met him in the kitchen. "Well, how was it?" she asked, setting plates on the table. "No luck," replied Alex briefly. "They got away, smart ones," Alice noted with a slight smile. Alex didn't answer, just shrugged. He went to the living room where Danny was playing with cars on the floor. The boy joyfully jumped up and ran to his father. "Dad, did you catch a wolf?" he asked with shining eyes. "No, son, not today," replied Alex, stroking his son's head. The family gathered at the table. Alice served dinner, buckwheat with stewed meat. Danny chattered non-stop. Alex ate silently, his thoughts were in the forest, and Olivia was still not there. She was late from school. Olivia walked along the dusty road leading from school to the village. The sun was already tilting toward the horizon, painting the sky in soft orange and pink tones. The backpack heavily pulled on her shoulders. Today they had assigned a lot of homework, but the weight was not only in the backpack. On her soul lay the burden of the morning conversation with her father. She replayed his words over and over in her head about veterinary being unserious, imagining how she could have responded, what she could have said to make him understand. But all the invented phrases sounded powerless and unconvincing. Her father never changed his mind. The hot summer air enveloped her, but Olivia barely noticed the warmth. She mechanically wiped her sweaty forehead with her hand and adjusted her backpack. Ahead began the forest edge, the place where the village ended and the tiger began. Olivia loved this spot. It was always cooler here, smelling of conifers and herbs. She stopped at the forest edge, gazing at the tall pines and spruces. Their trunks stretched to the sky, crowns rustled in the light wind, birds called in the branches. Here in the forest lived real wild animals, free, knowing no rules or commands. Olivia sighed, imagining how good it would be to be just as free. Suddenly she heard a quiet whine. The sound was barely audible, plaintive and helpless. Olivia froze, listening more carefully. Again, a quiet, drawn-out whine coming from somewhere in the bushes to the left of the road. Her heart beat faster. Olivia slowly stepped off the road, carefully treading on the tall grass, approached closer to the source of the sound, the thick thickets of rose hips and raspberries. She parted the branches with her hands, peering into the semi-darkness under the bushes, and saw him. A small grey creature lay curled into a ball under the bush. Olivia first thought it was a puppy, the size of a large cat, with fluffy grey fur and disproportionately large paws. He raised his head, and Olivia saw his eyes, yellow, frightened, full of fear. "Who are you?" she whispered softly, squatting down. Olivia thought it was a Laker puppy. He tried to crawl further into the thickets but was too weak. His paws buckled, body trembled. Olivia extended her hands slowly, trying not to scare him even more. "SHH, SHH, little one," she said soothingly, in the voice one uses with small children. "I won't hurt you, don't be afraid." The pup growled, but the sound came out not scary at all, more like a plaintive squeak. He didn't even have all his teeth yet. He trembled not only from fear but from exhaustion. Olivia immediately saw that he hadn't eaten for a long time. Ribs protruded under the thin fur. "Are you hungry?" whispered the girl, feeling everything inside contracting from pity. And all alone, where's your mom? She wanted to take him in her arms, press him to herself, warm him, but then remembered her father, imagined his stern face, heard his voice in her memory. A dog is not a toy. Feelings have nothing to do with work. If she brings home a stray puppy, her father definitely won't allow it to stay. There will be a scandal, shouting, bans. Olivia froze in indecision. On one hand, a dream of her own pet, pity for this helpless creature. On the other, fear of her father's anger, knowing they wouldn't understand her at home. The pup whined again, trying to stand on his paws. They buckled under him and he collapsed back to the ground. His gaze was so defenseless, so pleading. Olivia's heart ached painfully. Okay, she said decisively out loud. I can't leave you here, you'll die, at least I'll feed you. She quickly stood up and ran back to the road toward the village. In the center was a small shop selling everything necessary, from bread to nails. There must be dog food there. After a few minutes, Olivia ran into the store. The bell over the door jingled merrily, announcing a customer. Behind the counter stood Aunt Val, a plump, good-natured woman in her 50s with an eternal smile on her face. Oh, Olivia, she smiled welcomingly. What do you need, dear? Olivia quickly scanned the shelves, looking for the right section, saw bags of animal food on the bottom shelf by the wall. Dog food, please, she said, approaching closer. This small bag. She took the smallest bag and a bottle of water, placed them on the counter, pulled out the money her mom had given her that morning. Aunt Val rang up the purchase but looked at Olivia with curiosity. For you, did you get a little dog? She asked, handing the change. Olivia felt herself blushing. She couldn't lie, but she couldn't tell the truth now. No, for a stray dog, she muttered uncertainly. He's sitting by the road, hungry, I just want to feed him. Ah, what a kind girl, Aunt Val cooed. Good job, you have to pity animals. Olivia grabbed her purchases and ran out of the store without waiting for further questions, ran back to the bushes where she left the pup. Her heart pounded. What if he left or someone found him? But no, he was still there, lying in the same place, raising his head at the sound of her steps. Olivia squatted next to him, opening the bag of food, poured some onto a clean burdock leaf she picked right there. The pup warily sniffed. The smell of food made him stand up despite weakness. He slowly crawled to the food, keeping his eyes on Olivia, ready to jump away at any moment. But hunger proved stronger than fear. He began eating greedily, almost without chewing, swallowing pieces one after another. Olivia opened the water bottle, poured some into the cap, and carefully placed it next to him. The pup emptied the cap in seconds, lapping the water thirstily. Then he raised his muzzle and looked at Olivia. In his yellow eyes, there was no longer such fear. Something else appeared, cautious trust. Everything will be okay, said Olivia quietly, extending her hand. This time he didn't jump away, allowed her to pet him on the head. The fur was soft and warm. Olivia felt warmth spreading inside. She smiled for the first time that day. But what to do now? She couldn't leave him here by the road. It would get cold at night. He'd be hungry again, and if someone found him before her tomorrow, her father often drove this road to work or other hunters, they might shoot him. Olivia remembered the old shed behind their house. Her father used it to store tools but rarely went there, usually only in spring when preparing the garden. Now it was early July. Until autumn work it was far. There were old blankets there that her mom used to cover seedlings. It was warm and dry there. The decision ripened instantly. Olivia carefully took the pup in her arms. He weakly tried to break free but lacked strength. She pressed him to her chest, feeling his small heart beating. She unbuttoned her jacket, hid him inside, buttoned up again. "SHH, little one," she whispered. "Now we'll find you a home." She walked not along the main road, but by roundabout paths through neighbors' gardens, trying so no one would see. Her heart beat so loudly it seemed the whole village could hear it. Her hands trembled, but Olivia walked firmly forward. Finally, their house appeared. Olivia went around it from the back, saw the old wooden shed standing at the very edge of the plot, almost at the forest. She quietly approached the door, looked around, no one. She opened the door, which creaked plaintively on old hinges. Inside smelled of wood and earth. Sun rays filtered through cracks between boards, creating strips of light. In the corner lay a pile of old blankets and burlap. Olivia took the pup from under her jacket and carefully laid him on the soft blanket. He curled into a ball, still trembling. Olivia brought an old bowl that lay on a shelf, poured water from the bottle into it, poured the remaining food into another bowl. "Here," she whispered, stroking his back. "You'll be safe here. I'll call you Bim." "Yes, Bim, a good name for a dog." The pup, now Bim, looked at her with his yellow eyes. For the first time, he didn't flinch from her touch, allowed her to pet him, even pressed a bit closer to her hand. Olivia felt tears welling up in her eyes, but not sad, happy ones. She had a friend, even if secret, even if not for long, but her own. "I'll come back tomorrow morning," she promised, standing up. "I'll bring you food and we'll become friends, you'll see." She quietly left the shed, tightly closing the door, turned, looked at the old wooden structure. There inside, in the corner on old blankets, lay a little wolf pup, the very one her father had hunted that morning. But Olivia didn't know that. She thought she had saved a stray puppy and was happy. If this story resonates with you, like it and write a comment. That way, you'll help the channel grow and tell more such stories. The next morning, Olivia woke up earlier than everyone. Outside the window, it was just starting to lighten. The sky was painted in soft pink tones of early dawn. The house was silent, broken only by the ticking of the clock in the living room and Danny's quiet snoring in the next room. Olivia carefully got out of bed, trying not to creak the springs, quietly dressed, pulling on a light t-shirt and jeans. Barefoot, she sneaked to her room door, opened it slowly, listening to every sound. Her parents were still asleep. No sound came from their bedroom. She went down the stairs, stepping on the edge of each step where the wood creaked least, sneaked through the living room to the kitchen. She quietly opened the fridge, took a plate with leftovers from last night's dinner, a piece of chicken and some buckwheat, transferred everything to a plastic container she had prepared in advance. She slipped out the back door, trying not to let the door slam. The morning air was fresh and cool. After a hot day, nights always brought pleasant coolness. Dew glistened on the grass, wetting her bare feet. Olivia ran to the shed, constantly looking back at the house, fearing someone would wake up and see her. The shed door opened with a familiar creak. Inside it was dim, sun rays were just starting to filter through the cracks, but Olivia immediately heard joyful whining. Bim jumped up from his bedding and rushed to her, wagging his tail so energetically that his whole small body swayed from side to side. "Hi, little one," whispered Olivia, squatting down and letting him nuzzle her hands. "Did you miss me? I missed you too." She smiled, watching how he rejoiced at her appearance. In these 2 days, Bim had already learned to recognize her, her scent, her voice, her steps. He no longer feared, didn't try to hide, met her like an old friend. Olivia opened the container and poured the food into an old metal bowl she found in the shed corner. Bim ran to the bowl, but ate not as greedily as the first day, calmer, more measured, sometimes raising his head and looking at Olivia as if checking she wasn't going anywhere. The girl sat next to him on the floor, leaning her back against the wall, extended her hand and stroked his back. The fur became softer, cleaner. She had brought an old brush yesterday and combed him. Bim pressed against her hand, continuing to eat. His tail wagged slowly in sign of pleasure. After eating, he approached her closer and laid his head on her knees. Olivia scratched him behind the ears, and he purred contentedly, a sound like a cat's purr but lower. She pulled an old rope from her pocket that she found at home. "Want to play?" she asked, showing the rope. Bim immediately perked up, grabbed the end with his teeth and began pulling. Olivia pulled back, laughing when he growled and shook his head from side to side. He was so funny, serious and focused in his game. Suddenly he jerked sharply. Olivia couldn't hold on, and he tumbled across the entire shed, tangled in the rope. Olivia laughed. Bim jumped up, shook himself off, and rushed to her again with the rope in his teeth, demanding continuation. She noticed he had noticeably strengthened in just a few days. His movements became more confident, paws stronger, ribs no longer protruded under the fur. "You're growing," she whispered, looking at him with tenderness. "Soon you'll be big and strong." She had to leave. Parents would wake up soon. She needed to be home. Olivia promised to return in the evening, closed the shed door and ran back to the house. At breakfast, Alex sat frowning. He opened the fridge for milk and froze, looking at the shelves. "Alice," he called his wife without turning. "Did you cook something at night?" "What?" asked Alice, surprised, turning from the stove. "No, of course. Why?" "Food's missing," said Alex slowly, pointing to the fridge. "Yesterday there was a whole plate of chicken, now it's empty." Alice approached, looked into the fridge and was surprised too. "Strange," she muttered. "I really didn't take it." Olivia sat at the table, gaze fixed on her plate. Her heart pounded wildly. She felt her cheeks reddening and feared raising her head. Her father would definitely notice something. Her fingers clenched around the fork. "We'd only got up at night," quickly suggested Alice, trying to ease the tension. "He loves chicken." "Danny is 4 years old. He can't reach the top shelf," noted Alex, but averted his gaze from Olivia. "By the way, about Danny," continued Alice lively, "yesterday the teacher said he already knows all the letters. Imagine, at his age, the smartest in the group." The conversation smoothly shifted to Danny's successes, and Alex, though not immediately, got distracted from the missing food topic. Olivia exhaled in relief, but noticed her father glancing at her thoughtfully from time to time. He hadn't forgotten, just postponed the talk. After breakfast, Alex went out to the yard. Nala followed him as always. He wanted to check the fence on the back of the plot. Nick said he saw fox tracks there. The dog ran nearby, sniffing morning scents, but suddenly Nala stopped. Her body tensed, ears perked up. She sharply jerked toward the shed, pulling the leash. Alex looked at her surprised. "Nala, stay," he commanded, but the dog didn't obey. She pulled the leash harder, whining and sniffing. Her gaze was fixed on the old wooden shed. Alex became alert. Nala was an experienced hunting dog. She never behaved like that for no reason. She sensed something. He released the leash, and the dog rushed to the shed, stopped at the door, scratching it with paws and continuing to whine, sniffing the cracks between boards, trying to push her muzzle inside. Alex slowly approached, stood at the shed door, listening. Inside was silence, no sounds, but the smell he sniffed, the smell was foreign, unfamiliar, not mice, not cats, something else, something wild. He reached for the door handle, but at that moment, Alice called from the house. "Alex, Nick's calling, says urgent matter." Alex looked back, then at the shed door again. Nala still whined, but he decided it could wait, called the dog back, and went to the house, throwing one last wary glance at the shed. After school, Olivia hurried home faster than usual, practically running along the road, occasionally breaking into a light jog. In her backpack lay a new bag of food she bought during lunch break. Money was running out. She needed to think of something. On the way, she met the neighbor Aunt Mary, who worked as a cleaner at their school. "Olivia, where are you running?" called out the woman, smiling. "Is there a fire at home?" "No, just a lot of homework," blurted Olivia, stopping. "Want to start sooner?" "Good girl, diligent," nodded Aunt Mary approvingly. "Run, run." Olivia politely said goodbye and ran further. Approaching home, she stopped, looking around. She needed to make sure her father wasn't home. His car wasn't in the yard. Olivia squinted toward the forest. Yes, there in the distance by the ranger station, the familiar UAZ was visible. Sighing in relief, she rushed to the shed, opened the door, and was immediately met by joyful Bim. He jumped, wagging his tail, nuzzling her hands. "Hi, my good boy," laughed Olivia, sitting on the floor. "Look what I brought." She showed him a ball, and Bim immediately livened up, grabbed it with his teeth, but Olivia managed to pull her hand away, threw the ball to the other end of the shed. Bim dashed after it, grabbed it, and brought it back, dropping it at her feet. "Smart boy," admired Olivia. "You understand the game." They played for several minutes. His movements were quick and agile. After the game, she told him about her day, about boring math lessons, about friends' quarrel at recess, about the new biology assignment. Bim sat nearby, head on her knees, and seemed to listen attentively. His yellow eyes looked at her with such devotion that Olivia's heart melted. "You know," she confessed quietly, "with you, it's easier for me. You understand me, unlike Dad." A whole week passed since Olivia found Bim, a week of secret morning and evening meetings, a week of fear of being discovered and joy from new friendship. Olivia even taught him a few simple commands. "Sit," and he sat, looking at her attentively. "Give paw," and he extended his front paw. "Fetch," and he ran for a thrown stick or ball, returning them to her. The girl was proud of their friendship, felt a special bond with this small creature. He trusted her completely, fell asleep on her knees, allowed her to do anything with him. But sometimes she noticed oddities. Bim often approached the small shed window and looked out, gazing into the forest. His body tensed, ears perked up. He sniffed the air, and in his eyes appeared something distant, melancholic. And at night, when Olivia already left for home, she sometimes heard his quiet howl, drawn out, plaintive, full of loneliness, a sound that didn't resemble dog barking at all. It tore her heart, but she didn't know what to do about it. Alice stood at the kitchen window, stirring soup in a pot, but her gaze was directed not at the stove but at the yard. The last few days she noticed oddities in her daughter's behavior. Olivia had always been quiet and thoughtful, but now there was something new in her, a secrecy, a mystery. Before, Olivia returned from school at different times, stayed with friends, went to the library. Now she came exactly at the same time, around 4 in the afternoon, and immediately disappeared, didn't enter the house, didn't greet her mother through the window as before, just slipped around the corner of the house and vanished for 20 to 30 minutes. Alice first thought her daughter was just walking in the garden, but then noticed another oddity. Food was disappearing from the fridge, a little, but regularly. Leftovers from dinner, pieces of meat porridge. At first Alice thought Alex was taking it to work, but her husband denied it. And Olivia hadn't gained weight, on the contrary, remained as slim as always, so she wasn't eating the food herself. Then where was it going? Alice put down the ladle and wiped her hands on a towel. The decision ripened instantly. She must follow her daughter, not out of distrust, but out of worry. Something was happening, and as a mother, she had the right to know. That day, Alice deliberately looked out the window when she heard the gate creak. Olivia entered the yard with her backpack on her shoulder, looked around quickly, warily, then ran not to the front door but along the house, disappearing around the corner. Alice quickly put on a light sweater and quietly left the house through the front door, went around the house from the other side, hiding behind currant bushes. Her heart beat faster than usual. She felt like a spy, and it was unpleasant, but maternal instinct was stronger. She saw Olivia approach the old shed. The girl looked around again, then opened the door and slipped inside. Alice sneaked closer, stepping carefully not to give herself away, stopped by the shed wall, listening. Through the thin wooden walls came Olivia's voice, affectionate, tender, full of love. "Hi, my good boy, did you miss me? I brought you something tasty." Then came joyful squeaking and ringing bark. A dog. Her daughter had a dog in the shed. Alice froze, leaning against the wall. Her heart sank from the premonition of big problems. Alex, he would never allow keeping a dog, especially if Olivia got it secretly without permission. There would be a scandal, shouts, tears. Her girl dreamed so much of a pet. And now, Alice took a deep breath, gathering courage. She had to enter, had to see it with her own eyes and talk to her daughter. Quietly, she went around the shed and approached the door. Slowly, trying not to creak, she opened the door. Inside was semi-dark. It smelled of hay and wood. Olivia sat on the floor, and on her knees lay a small grey creature. At the sound of the opening door, the girl jumped up, pressing the animal to her chest. Unconcealed horror reflected on her face. "Mom," she exhaled, paling. The small creature in her arms growled low, warily. Alice froze on the threshold, examining it. It was a puppy, very small, with grey fluffy fur and yellow eyes. "Looks like a Laker," thought Alice, "probably from a yard dog." He growled at the unfamiliar woman, but didn't try to break free from Olivia's arms and attack, just warned. Alice slowly approached closer, trying to move smoothly, not scaring either her daughter or the puppy. "Olivia," she said quietly, "what is this?" "Mom, I can explain," stammered Olivia. Tears appeared in her eyes. "Please don't tell Dad." Alice looked around. In the corner stood bowls with water and food remnants. Old blankets were folded into a semblance of a nest. Her daughter had set up a real home for the puppy here. She sighed and sat on an old wooden crate by the wall. "Sit next to me," she said softly, patting the spot beside her. Olivia slowly approached and sat, still pressing Bim to her chest. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She feared looking her mother in the eyes. Alice hugged her daughter with one arm, pulling her close. "Don't cry," she whispered. "Tell me where he came from." "I found him," sobbed Olivia, "a week ago by the road near the forest. He was all alone, hungry and scared. I thought he was a stray puppy. I couldn't leave him, Mom. He would have died." Alice listened attentively without interrupting, stroking her daughter's back, feeling her tremble from tears and fear. "I knew Dad wouldn't allow it," continued Olivia through sobs, "but I just couldn't leave him to die." "I understand, sweetie," said Alice quietly. "Mom, please," Olivia looked at her pleadingly. "Let me keep him. I'll take care of him myself, feed him, walk him. Dad won't even have to do anything. Please." Alice sighed heavily, stroked her daughter's head, then looked at the puppy in her arms. He had stopped growling, studied Alice with his strange yellow eyes. She extended her hand, and he cautiously sniffed her fingers. "Olivia," began Alice seriously, "I understand your desire, understand why you did it, but you know Dad will be furious." "I know," whispered the girl, lowering her head. "He won't just forbid keeping the dog, he'll shout, scold, it will be very unpleasant. But maybe he won't find out," asked Olivia timidly. "We can keep Bim here in the shed, Dad almost never comes here." Alice shook her head. "No, sweetie, that's wrong. But Mom, listen to me." Alice took her daughter's face in her palms, making her look into her eyes. "You can't build good relationships on lies, not between spouses, not between parents and children. Family must trust each other. If we lie to Dad, hide the truth from him, it will destroy our trust." "But he won't allow it anyway," sobbed Olivia. "Maybe he will, maybe he won't. We won't know until we try," said Alice softly. "You know, your dad is strict, that's true, but he's not evil. He loves you, he just doesn't know how to show it." Olivia was silent, wiping tears. "I suggest this," continued Alice. "We'll tell Dad together this evening when he returns from work. I'll be with you on your side. Together we'll try to convince him." "He won't agree anyway," whispered Olivia hopelessly. "We don't know that for sure. But even if he doesn't, at least we'll be honest, and you can look him in the eyes without being ashamed of your deception." "Agreed," Olivia slowly nodded. She was afraid, very afraid, but Mom was right, lying was wrong. "Okay," she whispered, "we'll tell together." Alice hugged her daughter tightly, then extended her hand to the puppy. He sniffed her palm and nuzzled it between them as if participating in their embrace. Alice involuntarily smiled. "Bim, you say?" she asked. "Yes, I named him Bim," answered Olivia. "He's really cute," admitted Alice, petting the puppy on the head. They sat a bit longer, then Alice resolutely stood up. "Come on, let's take him with us to the house. We'll prepare dinner and wait for Dad." Olivia took Bim in her arms. He had noticeably gained weight in this week, become stronger and bigger. Mother and daughter left the shed and headed to the house. They walked slowly in silence, each thinking about the upcoming conversation. In the kitchen, Alice began preparing dinner, trying to occupy her hands to distract from anxious thoughts. Olivia sat at the table, holding Bim on her knees. She stroked his back, and it calmed her a little. He dozed, laying his muzzle on her arm, feeling safe. Alice occasionally approached her daughter, smiled encouragingly. They were a team. Whatever happened, they were together. Danny played on the floor with cars, completely unaware of the tense atmosphere. He hummed something under his breath, driving toys along an imaginary road. Sometimes he ran to Olivia and tried to pet Bim, and the pup patiently allowed it, though he didn't much like the boy's abrupt movements. The sun slowly tilted toward the horizon, the sky painted in orange and pink tones. Outside the window, it darkened. Alice turned on the light in the kitchen, looked at the clock. Soon Alex should return from work. Olivia also watched the clock. Her heart beat faster with each minute. Her hands trembled when she stroked Bim. She tried to remember these last minutes of peace because she knew a storm would start soon. The sound of an approaching car tore the tense silence in the house. Olivia flinched as if from a blow. Her hands instinctively clenched tighter, pressing Bim to her chest. The pup felt her fear and whined quietly, pressing his nose to her neck. Alice quickly approached her daughter and placed a warm hand on her shoulder, squeezing encouragingly. Their gazes met. The mother nodded. "Everything will be okay, we're together." The front door opened, heavy footsteps and male voices sounded. Alex entered first, behind him followed Nick. Both were in hunting clothes. They smelled of forest, conifers, and slightly of gunpowder. Rifles hung on their shoulders. Olivia paled so much that Alice looked at her frightened. The girl didn't expect to see Nick. She prepared for a talk with her father, but not in front of witnesses, in front of Dad's best friend, who was a hunter himself and treated animals as coldly as Alex. Quickly trying not to attract attention, Olivia bent down and carefully lowered Bim under the table, whispered to him, "Quiet, please, quiet." The pup obediently crawled under the table, curling up at her feet. Olivia straightened up. Her heart pounded so loudly it seemed everyone in the room could hear it. "Good evening," greeted Alex, entering the kitchen. He approached Alice and kissed her on the cheek. "Dinner ready?" "Yes, just set on the table," replied the wife, trying to make her voice sound natural. Nick stood in the doorway, taking off his heavy boots. "Sorry for intruding on your family dinner," he said with a guilty smile. "I'm literally for a minute. Alex promised me cartridges. I have an outing early tomorrow." Yes, now," nodded Alex, heading to the cabinet in the hallway where he kept hunting supplies. Nick followed him. Olivia sat motionless, not daring even to turn her head. Her hands lay on her knees under the table, fingers intertwined so tightly that knuckles whitened. She felt Bim lying at her feet. His warm body touched her ankle. Suddenly, the pup whined quietly, not loud, but in the kitchen silence, the sound seemed deafening. Olivia froze. Alice quickly spoke, trying to drown out the sound. "Nick, how was your hunt today? Alex said you were looking for that pack." Nick turned from the cabinet where Alex was rummaging in ammunition. "Yeah, not very successful," he answered. "They got away again, smart beasts, nothing to say." Bim whined again, a bit louder. Olivia carefully lowered her hand under the table, trying to calm him, pet him. He pressed against her palm but continued quiet squeaking. He felt Olivia's fear, her tension, and it transferred to him. "Here, take." Alex handed Nick a box of cartridges. "2 packs, enough." "More than," nodded Nick gratefully, taking the boxes. "Thanks, Alex. I'll return them as soon as I buy in the city." "Don't worry, they won't burn," waved off Alex. Nick said goodbye to the family, waving to Olivia and Danny. "Bye, kids. Alice, thanks for understanding." "Always welcome," smiled Alice, seeing him to the door. The door closed behind Nick. Olivia exhaled, not noticing she had been holding her breath all this time. But the relief was short-lived. Now they faced what she feared most. Alex locked the door, turned, and went back to the kitchen. Alice intercepted his gaze and gestured to the table. "Sit, dear, dinner's cooling." Alex nodded, took off his jacket, hung it on the chair back, sat in his usual place at the head of the table. Alice sat opposite, Olivia to the right of her father. Danny already sat in his high children's chair waving a spoon. They began eating. The silence pressed, becoming more tense with each second. Only the sound of spoons on plates and Danny's sniffling broke it. Alice tried several times to start a conversation, but words stuck in her throat. Suddenly, from under the table came a distinct whine, then a quiet bark. Alex froze, his spoon hung halfway to his mouth. He slowly lowered it back into the plate, not taking his eyes off the table. He turned his head, listening. The whine repeated. Now there was no doubt under the table was some animal. "What is that?" asked Alex very quietly. Olivia didn't answer, just sat, paled, unable to move. Alice opened her mouth to say something but didn't have time. Alex slowly leaned down and looked under the table. In the semi-darkness, he saw a grey muzzle with yellow eyes looking at him warily, a small fluffy creature curled at his daughter's feet. For several seconds he just looked, not believing his eyes. Then he slowly straightened up. His face was impassive, but Alice, who had lived with him for many years, saw every muscle in his body tense. "Olivia," he said very quietly and very slowly, "what is under the table?" Olivia couldn't hold back. She sharply bent down, grabbed Bim and pulled him from under the table, pressed him to her chest, hugging with her arms. Tears gushed from her eyes. She didn't even try to hold them back. "Dad, I can explain," she began through sobs. Alice quickly stood up. "Alex, listen, we wanted to." But Alex wasn't listening. He stood up abruptly. The chair fell back with a crash. His face paled, eyes widened from shock and rage at once. He looked at the creature in his daughter's arms, and something in his gaze was completely wrong. Danny, attracted by the noise and his sister's crying, slid off his little chair and ran to Olivia, saw the fluffy creature, and joyfully reached for it. "Doggy," he exclaimed, grabbing Bim by the ears. The pup jerked from pain, bared his teeth but didn't bite, just turned his muzzle away, trying to break free from the small, tenacious hands. Olivia quickly pushed her brother away. "Danny, no," she whispered. But Alex saw the bared teeth, saw the sharp though small teeth, saw the instinctive reaction of a predator. "This is not a dog," he shouted suddenly, and his voice trembled from rage and fear mixed. "Do you understand what this is?" Alice and Olivia froze, looking at him in incomprehension. "This is a wolf," shouted Alex, pointing at Bim. "A wild predator in our house." "What?" exhaled Alice. "It can't be. Look at him." Alex approached closer, pointing to the pup. "Those claws, that muzzle, ears, this is a wolf pup, a cub from that pack Nick and I hunted." Olivia and Alice looked at Bim with horror. Now that Alex said it, they began to see details they hadn't noticed before. 2 long paws, 2 sharp claws, the shape of the muzzle, yellow eyes. "No," whispered Olivia. "This can't be true." "We didn't know," quickly spoke Alice, approaching her husband. "Alex, we thought it was a Laker puppy, we didn't know." "You didn't know?" exploded Alex. "How could you not know? He's a wild beast." Olivia sobbed, pressing Bim to her chest so tightly that the pup whined. "We really didn't know, Dad. I found him in the forest. He was alone and hungry. I wanted to help." "Help?" Alex grabbed his head. "You brought a wild predator into our home. You endangered your brother, yourself, all of us." "He's not dangerous," shouted Olivia through tears. "Look at him. He's kind. He hasn't bitten anyone." "Not yet," cut off Alex. "But he's a wolf, a wild animal. When he grows up, his instincts will take over. He could kill." Alex, calm down, tried to intervene Alice. "Calm down," he turned to his wife. "We had a wolf in our house. Do you understand what could have happened?" Alice stood before her husband, not releasing his hand. Danny cried fearfully, pressed against the wall. The echo of the scandal rolled through the house, leaving only heavy silence and broken hearts. Alex stood in the middle of the living room, breathing heavily. His hands trembled, clenched into fists. His chest heaved as if he had just run a marathon. Adrenaline still surged in his blood. Anger didn't let go, but it was already mixing with something else, with worry. Alice sat on the sofa, holding scared Danny in her arms. The boy cried quietly, burying his face in his mom's shoulder. He didn't understand what happened, but the shouts and tensions scared him. Alice herself cried silently. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them, afraid to let go of her son. In the corner of the room, by the door, lay Bim. He pressed his ears to his head, curled into a ball, trying to become invisible. From time to time, he whined quietly, looking at the door through which Olivia had run. Several minutes passed in agonizing silence. Only the ticking of the wall clock and Danny's sobs broke it. Alex gradually came to himself, breathing evened out, hands unclenched. Anger receded, making way for thoughts. He looked at his wife, at the crying son, at the scared pup in the corner. What had he done? Shouted at his daughter, brought her to tears, drove her out of the house. And she, We need to go after her, said Alice quietly, raising her tear-streaked eyes to her husband. Alex, it's getting dark outside, she's alone. She'll come back, said Alex, but his voice sounded uncertain. When she calms down, she'll come back herself. And if not, Alice pressed Danny tighter. What if she doesn't come back? Alex didn't answer, walked to the living room and sank heavily into an armchair, ran his hand over his face. We need to wait. He should have just waited. Olivia wasn't little, 14 years old. She hid somewhere, would wait, calm down and come home. That's how it always is after quarrels. The family sat in the living room. The clock on the wall ticked deafeningly loud in the silence. Each second counted time, and with each minute, worry grew. Alice jumped up every 10 minutes and ran to the window, looking into the yard, but there was only darkness, barely diluted by the lantern light by the road. Summer night descended on the village. The sky darkened. Stars appeared one by one. It was warm, but Alice still wrapped Danny in a blanket. The boy finally calmed down and dozed off in her arms, not understanding why the adults were so tense. Alex paced the room from corner to corner, his hands clenched into fists, then unclenched. He looked at the clock, then at the window, then at the clock again. Bim lay by the door, not moving, only occasionally quiet squeaking, as if calling Olivia. An hour passed, then two. Olivia still wasn't there. Alice could no longer sit calmly. She carefully laid the sleeping Danny on the sofa, covered him with a blanket, and turned to her husband. Alex, it's almost 10 in the evening, she said firmly. We need to go look. Now. Alice, no, she raised her voice. She's my daughter, our daughter. She's out there alone in the dark. What if she got lost? What if she fell and hurt herself? Alex looked at the clock. Indeed, 2 hours had passed. Too long. Even if Olivia was offended, even if hiding to spite, she would have returned by now. Something was wrong. He stood up sharply, grabbed his jacket from the hanger. Okay, I'll go. He took a large flashlight from the table, checked the batteries, went out to the yard. The summer evening air was warm, smelling of herbs and flowers, but Alex didn't notice the night's beauty. He turned on the flashlight and began inspecting the yard. Olivia, he called loudly. Olivia, where are you? Silence, only crickets chirping and a distant dog bark at neighbors. Alex went around the whole yard, looked into the shed, empty, checked the bathhouse, no one, went around the garden, shone the flashlight on bushes, nowhere. He went out to the road, shining the flashlight both ways. And then he heard the sound of a motorcycle. He turned and saw an approaching headlight. It was Mike, the neighbor who lived 3 houses away. Motorcycle stopped next to Alex. Mike took off his helmet, looking at the ranger worriedly. Alex, what's wrong? Why are you walking with a flashlight at night? Looking for my daughter, replied Alex briefly. Olivia, you haven't seen her? Mike frowned, thought. Olivia, wait, yes, I saw her. About an hour ago, maybe a bit more. I was coming from the city. Where? Asked Alex sharply, stepping closer. Mike pointed his hand toward the forest. About 2 kilometers from here, if not more. She was walking along the roadside. I even slowed down, wanted to ask if to give a ride, but she waved off and went further toward the tiger. Alex felt everything inside turn cold. Toward the tiger, 2 kilometers from the village, that meant Olivia could have gone into the forest alone in the dark. Thanks, Mike, he muttered and ran back to the house. He burst into the house. Alice jumped up from the sofa. What, did you find her? No, Alex grabbed the car keys. But I know where she went. Mike saw her an hour ago. She was heading to the forest. Oh my God, Alice pressed her hand to her mouth. Alex thought quickly. If Olivia went into the forest an hour ago, she was already deep in the tiger. In the dark, it's easy to get lost, and there are wolves that very pack. He stopped, looking at Bim, who still lay by the door. A sudden thought struck him, crazy, incredible, but the only one. He approached the pup. Bim warily raised his head, saw the approaching person, and pressed his ears. Alex squatted, extended his hands slowly. The pup tried to crawl away, growled quietly. "SHH, little one," said Alex unexpectedly softly. "I won't hurt you." He carefully took the pup in his arms. Bim jerked, trying to break free, but Alex held firmly, though without causing pain. "What are you doing?" Alice didn't understand. "He can help find Olivia," explained Alex quickly, heading to the door. "His pack is there in the forest. They're looking for him. If I come with him, they might. I don't know, maybe they'll sense Olivia, or the pup will scent her." He didn't wait for an answer, ran out to the yard, got in the car, placed Bim on the passenger seat. The pup huddled in the corner, whined frightened. Alex started the engine and drove onto the road. He drove fast in the direction Mike indicated. Bim twisted on the seat, worried, tried to find a comfortable position. Alex held the wheel with one hand, steadied the pup with the other so he wouldn't fall. "Bear with it a little," he said, surprising himself. "Soon we'll find your mom and my daughter. Everything will be okay." After 10 minutes, he reached the spot where Mike saw Olivia, stopped the car by the roadside, took the flashlight and rifle, got out, took Bim in his arms. The pup trembled but didn't resist. Alex turned on the flashlight and headed into the forest. Trees closed over his head. The flashlight beam snatched pine and spruce trunks from the darkness. Underfoot crunched branches, rustled last year's needles. He walked fast, almost running. Bim in his arms began sniffing, suddenly perked his ears, nuzzled into the air. Alex felt the pup tense, start wriggling. "Do you sense something?" he asked. Bim whined, nuzzled left. Alex turned that way and the whining grew stronger. He was leading him. Alex quickened his step, now nearly running, stumbling over roots. And here he saw ahead a silhouette, a small figure standing motionless between trees. "Olivia," he shouted in relief. But she didn't turn, didn't move. And then Alex understood why. Alex froze and the flashlight nearly slipped from his hands. What he saw made his blood freeze in his veins. Olivia stood 10 meters from him, motionless as a statue, and around her, forming an almost perfect circle, were 5 gray shadows, wolves. They sat on their hind legs, surrounding the girl from all sides, not growling, not baring teeth, just sitting and watching. Their eyes glowed in the dark with yellow-green light, reflecting the flashlight beam. The leader, the largest, sat right in front of Olivia, 3 meters from her. Next to him, the she-wolf, the pup's mother, as Alex realized. The other pack members closed the circle. Olivia stood hugging herself, afraid to move. Her face was white as chalk, eyes wide open from fear. She saw her father, heard his shout, but didn't dare even turn her head. Alex felt his heart pounding in his throat. His hand instinctively reached for the rifle on his shoulder. Fingers found the stock, began slowly removing the weapon. He had to protect his daughter, had to. He lowered Bim to the ground, still not taking his eyes off the wolves. The pup fell on the soft needles, shook himself off. And then happened what Alex didn't expect. Bim let out a high, plaintive sound, not a bark, not a growl, a whine, drawn out, calling, full of longing, the voice of a cub who found his family. The she-wolf reacted instantly, her ears perked up, body tensed. She slowly stood on her paws and stepped forward toward Alex and Bim. Her movements were cautious, but there was no aggression in them. These were a mother's movements hearing her child's call. Alex raised the rifle, aimed at the she-wolf. His finger lay on the trigger. Another millimeter, and the shot would tear the night silence. But he didn't press because the wolves didn't move. The leader sat in place, observing. The other pack members showed no aggression either. They didn't growl, didn't bare teeth, didn't prepare to attack, just watched him, Bim, the man with the rifle. The she-wolf stopped a few meters from Alex. Their gazes met. The predator's yellow eyes looked into the human's eyes, and Alex suddenly understood. She didn't want to fight, she wanted to take her cub. Only him, nothing more. Slowly, very slowly, Alex lowered the rifle. Looked at Bim, who whined, looking at the she-wolf, then at his daughter still standing surrounded by wolves. But they didn't touch her. They came not for Olivia, they came for the pup. Alex bent down, looked Bim in the eyes, the little pup his daughter had fed, healed, loved, a wild animal that lived a week in their shed, the cub whose mother Alex tried to kill. "Go," he said quietly. Bim didn't need to be told twice. He rushed forward, small paws barely touched the ground. The she-wolf met him halfway, sniffed the pup all over, licked his muzzle, checked every paw, then pressed him to herself and Bim nuzzled her neck. The other wolves surrounded them. They quiet squeaked, rejoicing the return of the lost pack member. The leader approached the pup, sniffed him, rubbed his muzzle against his head. It was a family reunion. And then the leader raised his head and looked at Alex. Their gazes met again, man and beast, ranger and predator, father and pack leader. In the wolf's yellow eyes, there was no malice, no threat, only understanding, perhaps gratitude, definitely respect. Alex stood motionless, gripping the rifle. He could shoot, could kill the leader right now, do his ranger job. But he didn't raise the weapon because he understood. These animals were smarter than he thought. They came for their own, could have attacked his daughter, could have torn her apart, but chose to wait, chose peace. Wolves slowly turned, took Bim into the center of their circle, and began leaving into the forest depths, into the darkness between trees. Bim turned on the go, looked at Alex, one last look, farewell. Then they disappeared, dissolved into the night as silently as they appeared. Only the rustle of leaves marked their departure, and then it faded too. Alex stood without moving, still not believing what happened. The wolves let his daughter go, just took their cub and left. No blood, no violence. They were smarter, nobler than he thought. He came to himself and rushed to Olivia. The girl still stood in the same place, hugging herself, her whole body trembled. Tears dried on her cheeks, leaving salty tracks. She slowly turned her head and looked at her father. "Dad," she whispered in a breaking voice. Alex hugged her, pressed her to himself tightly, so tightly she gasped. His hands trembled. "Forgive me," he said, and his voice trembled too. "Forgive me, sweetie. I shouldn't have shouted, shouldn't have said those things. Forgive me too," sobbed Olivia, burying her face in his shoulder. "I got scared, ran away. I didn't mean to go so far, but then got lost. And then they appeared." SHH, Alex stroked her head. "Everything's okay, you're safe, I'm here." They stood embracing in the middle of the dark forest, father and daughter, truly close for the first time in a long while. "Bim found his family," whispered Olivia. "I'm glad for him." "Me too," answered Alex unexpectedly for himself. "He's where he should be in his pack. That's right, that's the natural order." He pulled away, looked his daughter in the eyes. "Let's go home, Mom's going crazy with worry." They slowly walked back to the car. Alex held Olivia by the shoulders, not letting go, afraid to lose her again. She walked beside, pressing against him. "Dad," she said quietly, "you understood, right? That wolves aren't evil, they're just different. They have their own life, their families." Alex was silent for a long time, then slowly nodded. "Yes, sweetie, I understood a lot today." They reached the car, got in, drove home in silence, each thinking about what they experienced. Approaching the house, Alex saw Alice standing on the porch. She rushed to them as soon as the car stopped, hugged Olivia, kissed her forehead, cried and laughed at once. Thank God," she repeated. The family entered the house embracing. Ahead was a long night of talks, tears and reconciliation, but the main thing had already happened. They found each other. The morning after that night greeted the Pine family with silence, but it was a different silence, not tense and heavy as before, but warm and calm. Alice prepared breakfast in the kitchen. The family gathered at the table. Everyone was silent, but this silence didn't press. Alex sat at the head of the table and looked at Olivia differently, not sternly, but with understanding and warmth. Alice held her husband's hand on the table, smiling. Danny chatted about his cars, not noticing the changes. Olivia sat by the window and occasionally looked at the forest, thought about Bim, missed him, but understood he was where he should be. "You miss him?" said Alex quietly. Olivia nodded. "Yes, but I'm glad for him. He found his mom, that's right." "You did the right thing," said Alex softly. "You saved him." After breakfast, Alex asked Olivia to stay. Alice led Danny to play. Father and daughter sat on the sofa in the living room. Alex was silent for a long time, then asked uncertainly, "Olivia, do you really want to become a veterinarian?" The girl nodded, surprised. "Yes, Dad, very much. Tell me, I want to understand." Olivia took a deep breath and began talking about her love for animals, about the desire to help them, treat, save. Alex listened attentively. When she finished, he slowly nodded. "I was too strict with you all my life. I saw animals as work. But after that night when I saw the wolves, I understood that they feel like we do." He took his daughter's hands in his. "If you want to become a veterinarian, become one. I'll support you, I promise." Olivia couldn't hold back. Tears gushed from her eyes. She hugged her father tightly for the first time in many years without fear. Alex hugged her back. "Thank you, Dad." 2 days passed. Olivia returned from school thinking about Bim. Approaching home, she surprisingly saw her dad's car too early for him and heard yapping. Alex stood on the porch with a smile. In his hands was a puppy, a small red-brown shepherd. "For me," whispered Olivia. "For you," nodded Alex. "Uncle Nick breeds shepherds. I chose the strongest." Olivia took the puppy in her arms, pressed him to her chest. Tears of joy streamed down her face. Alice with Danny ran out. Everyone surrounded Olivia and the puppy. Danny carefully petted the little one. Alice hugged her husband gratefully. "What shall we name him?" asked Alice. "Rex," said Olivia confidently. In the evening, the family gathered by the fireplace. Rex slept at Olivia's feet on the rug. Alex told Danny a fairy tale about wolves, about a wise leader, about a she-wolf mother, about a pup who found his way home. Respect for the animals sounded in his voice. Alice knitted, smiling. Her family was together and happy. Olivia sat next to the puppy, listening to her dad's tale, thought about Bim, hopping he was happy in his pack. "And are wolves kind?" asked sleepy Danny. "They're not kind and not evil, son," answered Alex. "They just live. They have their family like us." Later, Olivia went up to her room with Rex, laid him in a basket, sat on the bed looking at the puppy. Outside the window was a summer night. Somewhere in the forest, the wolf pack was going to sleep. Bim was next to his mother, safe. "Good night, Bim," whispered Olivia, "wherever you are." She lay down to sleep, happy. She had a family, a dream, a future, and now a friend, Rex. And in the forest, wolves howled their song about family and home. The world was big, but there was room for everyone, for people, and for animals. The Pine family learned to understand that, and it made them happier than ever before. Thank you for watching. What do you think of this story? Share your impressions. Your comment is very valuable to us.